This is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we are going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, one of my least favorite topics, but an important topic nonetheless. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com so you can get all of our latest content. I did update the website, and I know I told you guys I was going to take a break from videos, and I'm trying. I'm working on my projects. I'm finishing my book. Got a lot of things going on. But there's still important news that needs to get out, and you guys, I hope, appreciate it. And if you do appreciate it, I would appreciate if you share it. Share it out on your favorite social media platforms. Hope you guys have checked us out on minds.com/the Conscious Resistance Network and joined us in our Divest from Facebook campaign. If not, you can also follow on Steemit. You can follow, of course, on YouTube. And if you want to support, go the extra mile to keep me afloat doing this, since we work with some independent businesses every now and then to do partnerships and things of that sort. But for the most part, this is independently funded by my Patreon supporters. And if you want to go to patreon.com/Derrick Broze, that would be amazing. We can keep spreading awareness and spreading news. So let's get into this, guys. There's been a little bit of an update on Jeffrey Epstein. Whoops, I got to turn off my ad blocker. 1 second. Don't you hate that when this happens? I know these people are trying to make money, but look, the reality is that people want free stuff on the internet. All right. So the Miami Herald reports prosecutors finally want to hear from Jeffrey Epstein's victims. This is coming just a couple of weeks ago from Julie Brown, who is one of the main journalists who's been exposing Jeffrey Epstein specifically for the Miami Herald. Around the same time my documentary, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, came out last fall, she put out her 3-part series, which is a really good series, and it helped the mainstream, I think, start to really pay attention that Jeffrey Epstein didn't just molest or sexually abuse a couple of young girls, but that the numbers were in the hundreds. So it says more than a decade after federal prosecutors gave a secret plea deal to suspected child sex trafficker, the government finally wants to hear from his victims, indicating just a couple of Fridays ago that they wish to interview an unspecified number of women who were molested by Jeffrey Epstein. U.S. Attorney B.J. Pak of Northern District of Georgia is asking a federal judge for a 60-day period to consult with Epstein's victims, followed by a lengthy briefing schedule that, according to lawyers for 2 of the victims, could delay justice for months, if not longer. So if you read that carefully, that means this could just be, he's saying he wants to hear from the victims, but he's also saying he's going to take 60 days and then a lengthy briefing schedule. And so, this could just delay things for the rest of the year, potentially, right? So it could be a move to just push it off and keep people from really hearing more about it. Maybe it's a legitimate effort to actually hear from Epstein's victims for the first time, because as you guys know, or should know, when I went to Florida a couple months back, I think it was in December, around that time, when Jeffrey Epstein was having his most recent civil trial. There's several trials going on. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein didn't have to appear in court. He just had his lawyers issue some sort of half-assed apology, and then they settled out of court, and that kept his victims from being able to testify, which is what many of us are waiting for and hoping for, so that we can get even more evidence directly from the women themselves who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein. But as we know, he likes to bargain out of court and settle because he's got a lot of money, he's got a lot of influence, he's connected to lots of people, and more than likely has videotapes of people doing some things they probably don't want you to know. So it says if PAC is successful in obtaining a delay, lawyers for the victims have proposed to use that time to deposing critical stakeholders, including former Miami federal prosecutor Alexander Acosta, who helped negotiate Epstein's controversial sweetheart deal and is now Trump's labor secretary. And it says while the victims' lawyers do not oppose giving Epstein's victims a voice, they say that the proposal is so open-ended and vague that it obscures the fact that the government continues to propose solutions that will benefit Epstein, not his victims. There is no basis for continuing to delay the rights that federal law affords to Jane Doe 1 and 2 because the government now wants to talk to 2 other victims or 10 other victims or 80 other victims, said Jack Scarola of the legal team that represents Jane Doe's 1 and 2. Every victim's right exists independent of the interests of the other victims, and there's no way 80 young women are going to agree on what they want under the existing circumstances. So he's basically saying, look, I'm representing these 2 women. Let's do this case. If you guys separately want to go interview all these other 80 other women, 80 plus women, that's a good thing, but that shouldn't slow down what we're doing here. That's what I'm taking from what he's saying. He's saying the government also first needs to avoid Epstein's non-prosecution agreement, which we do know back in February a judge said was illegal. So his non-prosecution agreement, which gave him 13 months in prison, all these benefits, had taxpayers paying for his stay basically, and he was allowed to go home, and he was still receiving young female guests while he was at his office, and all kinds of just crazy things that we cover in my documentary and in my previous reports. That has been found to be illegal. That doesn't mean that he can be retried yet. We are still waiting for the judge to decide what that means. Okay, the judge admits the deal is illegal. If he decides that means he's going to overturn the original ruling, then potentially Epstein could face charges if and only if there is a district attorney or a district in the country that is willing to take up these charges. And apparently some of the states have statute of limitations which have already expired, and others apparently are just unwilling to do it. And apparently one of the places that would have to do it would be the Southern District of New York, which is known to be fairly corrupt. And so we don't really know what's going to actually take place, So we have to just keep an eye on this. This is why I'm giving you guys updates. This is just a brief update to tell you that, look, there's still movement afoot. The victims might testify or might get to share their information, at least with the lawyers. I'll say that. This probably won't be public to us, but at the end of the day, it's still valuable in the case, right? So I did notice this little tidbit here, though. It says, while he lists his permanent residence as his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, he still spends a great deal of time at his mansions in New York and Palm Beach. So what that tells me is if somebody had the time to be paparazziing, I've been to Epstein's house in Palm Beach, or to go to his New York mansion. We know the address. We know where it's at. You just have to, I guess, stake it out every day and wait for that opportunity. Can you imagine how epic that would be to get somebody to actually confront Epstein to his face? He'd probably try to sue. He'd freak out. I mean, there might be, I don't know, who knows what happened. But that is a fantasy of mine, as weird as that sounds. And here's another little interesting detail. Recently purchased another larger island that he is developing in the Caribbean. I hadn't heard about that. That's just a little tidbit buried down there. Because we know, those of you who know, that Epstein's Island is the place where these women were abused, and these young girls at the time, they're now grown women, they were recruited by his little gaggle of females and workers who helped him with this, and then they would take day trips to his private island on the Lolita Express, and basically this is where the sex crimes and the different things would take place, and apparently with some high profile people. And also some of the women said that they were being videotaped. So this island is important to the story. Now, there's a lot of false information about the story. I mean, about the island. I've seen some of you guys say, oh, no, the island burned to the ground. Oh, look, have you seen the hidden cameras of Jeffrey Epstein's Island? Look, two things. There's no evidence that there was a fire on Jeffrey Epstein's Island. And if there was, it doesn't really mean anything. There is evidence when you go on Google Maps that it does look like there's some kind of activity where there's more construction on Jeffrey Epstein's Island, maybe building tunnels and things like that. And people, a lot of these cases of child pedophilia, trafficking involve tunnels to keep people, I guess, moving without anybody seeing, especially in the age of Google Earth and where you can just look at satellite view and see what people are up to. But this claim that this video has been released is not accurate, guys. I mean, it could be, right? But when I look at that video, I'm like, well, it's black and white and grainy, and I can't really see anything. I see some people trying to interpret it like, look, you see somebody's being beheaded right here, and this and that. It's like you're just spinning your wheels. There's no evidence that that's real or accurate, or that it's Jeffrey Epstein's island. So why not just stick with the facts we got? So the facts we have: Epstein has an island, and apparently he is building out a new island. Look at this from the New York Post. Again, a couple weeks ago, billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein illegally building Virgin Islands compound. He's gotten himself into a new tangle with the law running afoul of Virgin Island environmental regulations with construction on his island compound despite a stop work order. So he has, as they go into the whole thing right here, he has basically been trying to build a compound on the 165-acre island of Great St. James, which he purchased in 2016 for $18 million. So he lives on Little St. James. That's where everything happened. Now, apparently he's trying to buy Great St. James next door. He already bought it, but he's trying to build on it. The project has been the subject of a stop work order since December, says a spokesman for the Virgin Islands Department of Planning and Natural Resources. The spokesman confirmed that there has been unauthorized work on the island since the work order has issued. So they tell Jeffrey Epstein to stop, and he just like, yeah, whatever, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'll probably just buy you guys off, or, whatever I have to do. He is building a complex of buildings on the island that include an amphitheater and an underwater office and pool. And you can go here. This is the Virgin Islands Daily News. Epstein building a compound on Great St. James. A schematic filed with the Department of Planning and Natural Resources shows development plans for Great St. James Island. And let's take a closer look at this. So he's at least, having to file the paperwork and show them what his plans are. Let me see if I can get this to pop up. All right, well, let's zoom in here a little bit. All right, what do we got? Coconut Grove, amphitheater, garden, residential cottage, main residence, second residence, something pool, main entrance with pool, terrace with something, decorative garden, work shed and machine shop, underwater office and pool, Coconut Grove, marine, electrical, something, resident cottage, storage building, solar array and generator, storage building, landscape area with flagpole and residential cottage, and security building. So he's building a number of things, and you can see this island is a bit bigger and differently shaped than Little St. James, which is his current island. And yeah, so who knows where this is going? But Jeffrey Epstein is building. He's building another island, and are building on another island. And this is while he's already suspected for hundreds of sex crimes against hundreds of women, trafficking them, just abusing them, all kinds of things. And yet this dude is out here roaming free after his sweetheart deal, out there in the middle of the Bahamas with one island already, now building another compound. I mean, I don't know what it would take to actually stop this guy, because even if, let's say, the U.S. tries to hold him accountable, I've been there, and he won't come to court. He's not just going to show up to court voluntarily. He has his lawyers speak for him. I think it would take a whole lot of effort and some damning evidence for them to get Jeffrey Epstein to show up in court. Hopefully that will happen so that these many, 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 many victims can have some sense of justice, and maybe justice could be restored in the American criminal justice system. I doubt it. It's so corrupted, and as you guys know, that these people aren't just some random just random criminals out there. These are people who are actively engaged in this kind of activity, because there is a culture of pedophiles that does exist in the United States and around the world, and they find themselves into positions of power, whether that means government, whether that means religion, celebrities of various kinds, police, schools. I mean, it exists, and it might be a quiet, whispered about thing, but there is a culture of this that exists, and it's something that's very damaging to the kids and to the adults and to just society in general. I think there's definitely some truth to the statement that pedophiles are running the world. So we have to continue to expose this. We have to continue to share this information. And if you found something valuable here, I encourage you to do that. Share this with your friends. Share this with your family. Share my documentary, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, if they have no idea about any of this. Get them exposed to what's going on. And we can continue to at least hold these people accountable. And maybe one day somebody will stick a camera in Epstein's face and he'll have to speak for himself. But until then, we'll keep shining a light on all the updates. That's it for now, guys. Remember,